Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show, where I am Patrick Daugherty, joined by Denny Carter and Kyle Dvorchak, and we will be joined later in the show, 20 to 25 minutes in, by a special guest, the Ringer's Danny Kelly. You may know him as a draft expert and fantasy football fanatic, and he is going to talk to us about his 5 favorite skill player prospects heading into next Thursday's draft. But before we get to Danny, we're going to get through a little NFL news and a little late breaking news. So, guys, we were joking about right before the show started. It's 4:20. You might be listening on 4:21, but no one knew that Bill Belichick celebrated 4:20 until he hired Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator for 2022. And it was a very, very 4:20 moment from maybe the least 4:20 human being I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, Matt Patricia, no longer an offensive coach. He's been hired as a senior defensive assistant by the Philadelphia Eagles. And is this a happy ending? Is this I don't even know what this is. Are there any winners here?
I would say it's a better fit considering he is, I'm looking at my notes, he is, a lifelong defensive coach. And last year he was told to do some offense, and they couldn't get a play in until November 12th.
Literally could not get a play in. No.
Belichick wrote down, you're the offensive coach now. And he said, he read it because he wasn't talking to Belichick. He's like, offensive? I can do offensive. This is going to be atrocious this year.
The thing is, he's not really much of an improvement as a defensive mind.
No, he's a bad defensive coach and a worse offensive coach.
He single-handedly lost a Super Bowl to Nick Foles before going to Detroit and then overseeing one of the very worst teams of the 21st century. So
I actually don't understand how Matt Patricia. I understand that the guys get recycled and retreads, and they have friends in the league and whatever. I actually don't understand how his constant and never-ending failures as a coach have not cost him something. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't matter.
You started the sentence with all of the reasons that it has not cost him.
Right.
Retread, recycled, guys failing upwards. You seem to understand it perfectly. So I don't know what the problem is here.
I do understand it.
Denny, real quick, I meant to do this before we on air. It'll be a little awkward on air, but just a little housekeeping item for the NBC Sports Edge family is that your expense request for $8 a month for Twitter Blue has been denied. We will not pay for that.
Dang.
We will not pay for that.
I had to give it a shot, right? Am I right, Elon?
You did.
Are you listening?
He is listening, and seemingly listening to absolutely nobody as he embarks on the single worst business model I've ever seen in the history of business.
According to you, and last time I checked, Pat, you're not a billionaire.
No, he's just staking his entire investment on a subscription service that he made sure the reputation for was completely toxic 6 months before it even launched. This seems like kind of a tough business model.
It's you know what it is. It's a galaxy brain model, and for me, I have to respect that.
It's very, very galaxy brain. Yeah, we probably should have talked about that in today's Galaxy Brains. Check it out on Denny. What's the YouTube page it's on called?
NFL on NBC YouTube page. Check it out. Galaxy Brains will be up in a matter of hours. Definitely.
We talk about Russell Wilson and Bill Belichick every single week. Speaking of Galaxy Brains, there was the worst kept secret of the 2021 NFL offseason was Kyle Shanahan had to have Mac Jones. Nothing could come between him and Alabama quarterback Mac Jones. And then he selected Trey Lance. And he has hated every single moment of it since it happened and can barely hide his contempt for the movie made, even though everyone in the 49ers speaks very, very highly of Trey Lance, the young man.
As a person.
Kyle Shanahan psyched himself out, drafted a player he just clearly didn't want that seemingly, I guess, doesn't fit his system. They're talking now about the guy who was the final pick of the draft last year being the clear-cut starter, while they signed Sam Darnold to be the backup. As we've discussed before, Sam Darnold would not have signed with the 49ers if there was any expectation. He would be the number 3 quarterback. It seems Trey Lance is on the way out. They get closer to just outright confirming this every day. Denny, or like you said in Galaxy Brains, they said they answer calls about Trey Lance trades, but they will not make them.
They will not make it. You're not going to see me calling. John Lynch said I refuse to call. People are begging me, please call me about Trey Lance. I won't call. I will pick up the phone, but I'm not going to make the call.
He's not going to make the call. Maybe building smoke that someone who's been making these calls are the Houston Texans, who now have like an entire 49ers coaching staff down in Houston. And this is accompanied by smoke. The Texans are thinking about passing on a quarterback at number 2 overall. Because it seemed like they wanted Bryce Young, but he seems to be now the runaway favorite to go number 1 to the Panthers. Kyle, just like, who might actually trade for Trey Lance? And would the Texans be better off saying, I'm surrendering a 2nd and 4th round pick for Trey Lance rather than taking CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, etc.?
No, they should not trade for Trey Lance. And I like Trey Lance. Like, I think he was a really interesting prospect and hasn't gotten a fair shake, not by his own team. Like, it's just bad luck, essentially. It hasn't really gotten a fair shake in the NFL. But there is a lot of information baked into the fact that, you know, the media is clearly being told, probably by the 49ers, that we're open for business. Like, if you are that willing to give up a player who you so recently traded so many first-round picks and spent 1 first-round pick on, like, that's essentially data that tells us.
And Kyle has been disappeared into the void.
Didn't pay for the check.
Nope, didn't pay for the StreamYard check, and they're hardcore about it. They bounce you out.
You gotta go.
We're so sorry to our listeners. We'll welcome Kyle Dvorchak back in the stream as he scrambles and panics, wondering why he dropped out. Kyle, you can resume your thought on Trey Lance. Pick up exactly where you were, the exact word you were at.
That I think that's data that he doesn't look good in practice, and they're not valuing him highly at all. So no, take CJ Stroud. Just do the right. The right is like there's a moral rightness to it.
There is.
Take CJ Stroud. He's really good. Just
the moral necessity to take CJ Stroud.
He's the best quarterback on the board. I think for teams that look like they should be maybe eyeing Trey Lance are the teams that are getting seriously shut out of quarterback to the point where like there's no way like there's no real way for Washington to trade up, right? They're giving up so much to move up to like 6 or 7. If a 4th quarterback, not even the 2nd or 3rd, if a 4th quarterback makes it to like 7, Washington is giving up like a 1st plus to go from what they're like 15 or something. 2 firsts, a 1st and 2nds. That's not worth spending to get the 4th best quarterback in the draft. Could you negotiate a late 2nd or a 2nd round pick to get Trey Lance? I don't even know if it would, like, it could be more like a conditional 2nd, more like the way we saw Carson Wentz passed along a few times. So that's maybe worth a gamble, right? Because your other options are also not good for the teams that really have no way out of their situation. And I think the Trey Lance proposition is not terrible in that, like, at this point, he's probably a bust, right? It doesn't look great. If you're the Commanders, the Bucks, and you get this quarterback who completely flops, 1, your other quarterbacks are probably flops anyways, but 2, like, fine, you pick with the 1st pick next year. That's good. You want a player who is, at this point, super boom bust, because that's the only way for you to progress as a franchise. You don't want these middle-of-the-road guys. Like, you don't want to be starting Jacoby Brissett or Taylor Heineke for 17 games, or Baker Mayfield. You actually might want to start that guy for 17 games to get the 1st overall pick. But
guaranteed.
You want to, you want a guy who can get you the 1st pick, or who maybe lives up to the hype that we saw a few years ago. And then you're in a better place as a franchise. So those are the teams that I think should be taking flyers, not teams that have legitimate shots at, Stroud, at even, I'm not a Levis guy, maybe Will Levis, you should probably take Will Levis over Trey Lance. Yeah, that's not that controversial. And Anthony Richardson, the teams that, like the guys picking in the teams, eat your heart out. Go get a Trey Lance if you really want.
So you're saying, Kyle, that NFL teams should take the GPP bro approach to team building. You're going to finish first or you're going to finish last, but you don't want to be in the middle. And I get that.
Yeah, and next thing you know, you've won $2 million and you betray your coworkers.
Come on.
Too soon.
Not too soon.
Pat, we love you. We love you, buddy.
I won $58 in golf the other day, and I didn't leave.
Yeah, exactly. So we love you, Pat Corain. Trey Lance, I'll say, I feel like I've already suggested these teams several times, kind of like in the Levis Anthony Richardson combos. But if these teams aren't sold on Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, or they just don't make them back, I mean, why the Falcons and Titans, 2 run-based offenses that badly need a talent infusion at quarterback, would make a lot of sense to me. Is like someone to take a Trey Lance flyer. And the thing is, it is just a true flyer. That's what's like so frustrating about Trey Lance is we didn't know a ton about him entering the league because he had just played so little in college. He had attempted like fewer than 400 throws since high school, and we just haven't gained a whole lot more information on him. So the teams could just view this as like a total shot in the dark. And I threw out like a 2nd and 4th round pick. That sounds fair to me, but I mean, maybe that's just like wildly overvalued for what Trey Lance is at this point. But yeah, I just think someone like the Falcons or the Titans who want to be run-based anyway are going to try to keep things simple for the quarterback. I feel like they would make a lot of sense.
Yes.
Maybe more sense than the Texans as a team to take a flyer on Trey Lance.
I agree. I actually think the Titans are a very likely fit because clearly they're out on Tannehill. I think Tannehill's 35. I mean, it
is crazy how old he is.
That's snuck up. The last I looked, he's 27 and then all of a sudden he's 35. Anyway, so he's done. And
Wow.
they're, Mike Vrabel is never, ever going to coach a balanced offense. Okay. Like that's just not happening. So Trey Lance makes a lot of sense for a team that wants to throw the ball as little as possible.
He would make a lot of sense. You know what else would make a lot of sense for a team that wants to run the ball as much as possible?
What's that?
Allen Robinson. He's a run blocker now at this stage of his career. Yeah, come on.
I mean,
it's groaning.
It's too much.
You're both groaning immediately. I mean, it's pretty rare to get the double groan.
He listens to the show.
He does.
I gave like a half laugh. It was like I'd say you got a 1.5 groans.
No, you got 2 groans. You guys found that comment to be inappropriate. He's been acquired by the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I've talked about this with Denny before. I can't remember what the context was, but the Steelers like skill core isn't as deep as you're used to. Like usually there's like 3 or 4 receivers. Like how are they going to divvy this up? But it's Deontay Johnson, who, as we know, has his limitations. It's George Pickens, who had kind of a mixed rookie year. Like I kind of can't get past the chatter that like if George Pickens was really good, he would have commanded more targets.
Yes.
Maybe it just wasn't possible though in this offense. And then you have Pat Freiermuth. So it's a better top 3 than several teams, like probably a lot of teams, but not as deep as we're used to seeing from the Steelers skill core. Now they have Allen Robinson. I mean, it's a smooth the needle like any way whatsoever. No, it doesn't. Yeah.
No.
Nope.
I mean, look,
Not
what you have is a likely washed up, large-bodied receiver who they obviously they don't age well typically, going to a team that will make every effort to never throw the football this year. He's going to be 3rd, maybe 4th, maybe 5th in the pass catching pecking order. There is no room for any sort of volume-based upside here. 0 room. Okay. So I don't like, I saw some positive spins on this. Maybe from a real football standpoint, it's good, but from a watching the dots on the screen, looking at the box score, it's not going to happen.
No, not going to happen. And man, just like another enormous whiff for the Rams. So I think paid Allen Robinson $25 million total dollars somehow to catch.
I think he was going to be paid $15 million this year, and they ate 10 of it, is what I saw in the move. And Pittsburgh pays him about $5 million.
They are paying him $5 million.
Yeah, and the pick swap is nothing. It's like the 20 picks in the 7th round. Like it's meaningless. But that should tell you how we should feel about this. Like they essentially just wanted some money, and they were willing to get nothing in return, essentially, to get 10 mil back. And the Steelers had enough money. It's like, sure, we'll take a flyer on this guy because it wasn't too long ago that he was good. But
I feel like the ceiling for this move though is like AJ Green with the Cardinals, and like really, sense. Honestly, that has to be the ceiling for this move, right?
Yeah, sure.
That's pretty bad. Is there?
I mean, he's totally bombed now for back-to-back teams. Or is it? Well, I guess I don't know. We all thought it was like sabotage in 2021 with the Bears, but no, it just turned out his legs were gone.
Yeah.
And, Matt Nagy was right. Matt Nagy is waiting for your apology, by the way, everybody.
Matt Nagy has never been wrong.
No, he hasn't at all.
Wait, let's get Matt Nagy to Pittsburgh, a little reunion with Trubisky, with Robinson, gang's all there.
Oh
my God.
That's the most down bad reunion in the history of sports.
That's 2 double groans. I heard a double groan from you guys.
Yeah, please.
We are groaning today.
Man, so George Pickens and Allen Robinson, just like 2 guys that are like having to win like contested catches, and like that's like who they're giving Kenny Pickett. It's kind of weird. I can't really say this makes sense from a team perspective.
By the way, yeah, you're right, Pat. George Pickens, there are a lot of kind of peripheral stats that are very concerning for George Pickens. I know he has that dog. Okay, no one's denying.
Looks
that.
like our next Gabe Davis mea culpa is coming.
I don't know how far the dog can get him.
Yeah, the dog. I mean, dog levels can take you very, very far, but
Okay.
maybe not far enough. Speaking of dog levels that need to be reined in, according to his own coach, Josh Allen, that's been the narrative of his offseason. He's got to run less. He's got to stop taking these big hits.
Yeah.
He injured the elbow last season. That wasn't on one of these scrambles, but that he's just kind of like a ticking time bomb of a major injury waiting to happen if he doesn't rein in his style of play. Josh Allen himself has now hinted he may run less in 2023, speaking to ESPN's Elena Gainsberg, or paraphrasing him, Elena Gainsberg reported that Allen, quote, realizes the time will come when he will have to transition from being a football player first and a QB second to a QB. I don't know. This quote doesn't make sense.
To a QB first and a football player second.
Yeah. Anyways, he wants to run less in theory. Are we putting any stock into this whatsoever? Or
what do you think, Kyle?
Can you not take the dog out of the Allen?
Maybe someday, but certainly not today. I mean, he's really good at it. He was like second in EPA per rush attempt among quarterbacks, but quarterbacks are generally far more efficient running. So he was just one of the best pure runners in the NFL last year. It's been that way for years. And I'm not, Denny, this is a great example. I'm not a dots guy, but if you've ever seen where one dot, because they don't have a dimension of height, phases through the other one, that's when Josh Allen literally hurdles someone. That's what's happening there, trying to describe the film to you. If you've ever watched Josh Allen play, he's not getting reined in. It will never happen. And I hope it doesn't, because the world in the NFL is better that way. But that's something that he plays so stylistically who he is. Maybe in 10 years, we'll be waiting a while. I'd say we will be waiting a while.
It is hard to imagine him making that switch. I have some numbers for the folks if you're interested in what his rushing has looked like in recent seasons. So in his breakout 2020 season, he averaged 4.7 rushes per game. That dropped to 4.2 in 2021, and then last season it remained at 4.2. So there's already seen a little bit of a decrease in rushing. As far as expected rushing fantasy points, he was fourth among all quarterbacks in 2022. He was third the year before. He was fourth the year before that. So it's pretty much stayed the same. I don't really see it changing dramatically, but I do think it is worth reading a little bit into what the Bills have said as an organization. Brandon Beane, the general manager, expressed some concern. Josh Allen revealed during this week's interview that, quote, I'm getting older, which is good information to have. And then Bills head coach Sean McDermott said back in late March, he said, quote, I don't think that's a healthy way to play quarterback in this league, and it's undefeated that things are going to happen when you play that style. We have to get that adjusted, and it's never going to go completely away, blah, 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 blah. He goes on. I do think there's a chance that it will be ratcheted back, but I don't think that you can take that out of Allen's game completely.
No, I think their concern is kind of like when you corner a politician, like in the Senate hallway, and like they realize they're forced to give a quote on something really controversial, and they just say, I'm concerned. I'm very concerned about this. And like there's eyeing up the Senate subway, like, can I still run? Am I young enough to run? Can I please get out of here? And I just think you could sooner take the dual threat out of Josh Allen than you could the sending Kyle Juszczyk into motion for absolutely no reason on every play out of Kyle Shanahan. It's just not going to happen.
You're so upset about Shanahan.
It's just not going to happen. And it's like the classic best laid plan where like the literal very first third down of the season, Josh Allen's like, well, this play is too important for me not to run.
Yeah, right.
It's the same thing. You could sooner take the just absolutely absurd level of craziness and awesomeness out of Josh. You could, Michael Burton inside shovel pass on the 1 yard line from Andy Reid. Dials that one up. You get to that point, you're like, oh my God, Andy Reid, this is great. I can't believe it. Let's run the ball with a normal run on the 1 yard line. And he's like, Michael Burton, got to get you in there, bud.
It will never, ever happen. But what is about to happen is the Ringer's Danny Kelly is going to join us to talk his 5 favorite skill player position prospects this year right after this. Every season is draft season. Get your Rotoworld Draft Guide bundle today and dominate your football, baseball, and basketball drafts. It's packed with profiles, rankings, and projections. Order today and get all 3 Rotoworld Draft Guides for the price of 2. Plus, use promo code BARRY to save an extra 20% off at checkout. That is promo code BERRY to save an extra 20% at checkout. And don't forget, download the Rotoworld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It is available in your app store today. It is now our distinct pleasure to welcome in a man by the name of Daniel Kelly. You may know him as Danny Kelly. He's a longtime writer for The Ringer. He's a co-host of The Ringer Fantasy Football Show, The Ringer NFL Draft Show. He writes a lot about the draft. He's got his top 50 prospects pinned to his profile on. But Danny, I see no blue check mark.
I know. You can call me Daniel now. So because
it's true.
Anything goes really at this point.
No blue check. I just can't help but notice you have no status.
How do we know it's you? Is what we're asking. I mean, know if this is a body double.
You don't, and that's the beauty of it. That's why it works so well. Is you have no idea if it's actually me. It's pure chaos, anarchy, and it just makes a lot of sense to do it this way. Don't ask why. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Danny's an agent of chaos, and yeah, according to the NBC legal guidebook, we're only allowed to have guests who have clout. And you have no clout without a blue check. So, but we are making
clout score. What's my clout score these days?
Yeah, I know. The Zoomers will not remember clout.
Oh man, I wanted to boost my clout score more than my credit score back then.
Taking out extra clout credit cards.
Yeah, they won't remember clout. They won't remember.
I can't tell if this is a bit you guys are all doing upon.
No, we're old. We're old. Don't worry.
Do you guys remember Fave Star? Remember, was that how you pronounced it? Man, there were some good websites.
Go back to E-Bombs World if we're really talking about
exactly. TwitPic. There were a lot. There was like a whole Twitter expanded universe.
There were a lot of ways to measure your self-worth according to your internet presence back in the day. Where did that go? I feel too good about myself today. I need to feel worse.
Anyway, I just having a hard time getting through the show today after losing my check mark. I'll be honest.
You do sound a little down.
Yeah, Danny, before you got here, I broke down in tears several times. And like I don't know why.
He was actually crying and dry heaving before the show.
Yeah.
Weeping.
To be clear, this time felt different though, because he does it before every show. But you can tell this time it was an elevated level of upset.
Totally.
We got great makeup people that they send to my house in St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm looking good. I'm feeling good, and we're feeling really, really good about welcoming Danny in, who is, I really is a draft expert. Love your stuff on the draft. Always love hearing your opinion on the draft. And we put you on the spot to just come up with some content for us, basically, and talk about your 5 favorite
content.
Skill player prospects heading into 2023 draft. A week from today. Who do you want to start with, Danny?
So low-hanging fruit, I guess, but Jaxon Smith-Njigba, wide receiver at Ohio State, who throughout this whole process, I've always felt a little bit like I'm taking crazy pills about why I think he started out the process like a little low. People were talking about how he's a fringe first round, second round pick, doesn't have enough speed, can't play on the outside. And I was always a little mystified by that talk. And that was just coming straight, I think, from the NFL. Like that was sort of the feedback that people like Dane Brugler, Daniel Jeremiah were getting from the NFL. I always felt that was a bit strange. And then throughout this process, I think he's really separated himself from the rest of the pack. He's the clear-cut top receiver. He kind of was always in my mind. And, even going past sort of I think the opinions from the NFL and maybe just the impressions from the NFL, I do think he has the skill set to play all over the formation. Maybe he's not going to be primarily outside, and I think that's fair. But a guy who can line up at the Z maybe, or get some snaps on the outside. I think he brings that to the offense. He has the ability to play in 2 receiver sets. I think he has the skill set to do that. And so, a lot of these concerns and worries of JSN coming into this process have it felt like they've kind of melted away. And he's the clear-cut best route runner. He's got, a ludicrously productive season on his resume. Obviously
that's one thing that really, really stands out. And wasn't he supposed to be like the number 3 receiver that year for Ohio State? And he came out and just posted 1,700 yards or something.
Yeah, 1,600 and change, which was more than on that team, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson.
Right.
And also Marvin Harrison was on that roster, I believe, as well. And he had to beat out future first round picks to get on the field to play with future first round picks who were older than him also. And he outproduced them so easily.
Yeah.
That's unreal. And sure, you could say it's easier when you play with those guys, but it is so hard to earn targets when you play with rookie of the year, number 1 and number 2 or 3 or whatever. Like earning targets amongst those guys is like being a man amongst other men level of thing at the end at the
Totally.
college level, and it will translate.
And that, I mean, that's a great point. That's actually another reason I have more confidence throughout this whole process, more and more confidence in him. And even if you go further past like early college career production, like if you look at what he did in high school, I mean, he's a 5-star prospect coming out of Texas. Just absolutely ludicrous numbers in high school, like going back all the way. Like he's just been a stud since the very beginning, and he's only produced every time he's on the field. Like this is all he does. And so, like to me, that it feels like we're quibbling a little bit too much about where he's going to line up in the NFL. Like he's just a very, very good player. So even though it's low hanging fruit, I know that we've probably talked about Jaxon Smith-Njigba a ton. I just had to bring him up because he's just so fun to watch. I think he's going to be a really good player. And I think he's going to hit the ground running in the NFL, assuming he can stay healthy.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because, like you said, the narrative, draft season's so long.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's like every hyped draft prospect basically lives long enough to become the villain. And I feel
CJ Stroud this week. Yeah,
exactly. I feel like that's kind of happened with JSN.
Yeah.
And it's funny. Like you said, that you think he actually could line up on the outside maybe, but even if he couldn't, he's just like uncontainable basically over the middle and like intermediate areas. But Danny, so I talk about the narratives of JSN real quick. Like I've seen people like derisively, however you pronounce it, compare him
like British.
Yeah, to Jarvis Landry. Is comparing him to Jarvis Landry slander or praise, you think?
I don't think it's slander. I think maybe it depends. It depends on who's saying it and how they're meaning it, because obviously like, if you look at
it's
Landry's
all in the
career,
tone of the Jarvis Landry comparison.
Right. Landry's had a long, good career and productive. So from that point of view, if I know I'm getting Jarvis Landry, like that's good. That's a good thing. I think.
Yeah, like
it. Go ahead.
He's 3 1,100-yard seasons, 5 Pro Bowls, like in the NFL for 9, I think, years and counting. Like, sure, I'd love to all of the receivers I draft just be Calvin Johnson. Why can't they all just be that? But like,
exactly.
Even if he is just Jarvis Landry, that would be really good. And he's like better than that too, by a lot.
So, Danny, you want him to be Jarvis Landry 2.0?
I mean, it wouldn't be too bad. Did you say Denny or Danny? I
said Denny. Sorry. Yeah.
Carter. Just call me Daniel on this.
Carter. The amount of Irish names on this, except for it's kind of ruined by Denny. Denny's not an Irish name.
Sorry, man. I thought Carter was an English name, but no, I guess.
Maybe it is. Yeah.
Danny, I did have a question for you. So, does JSN profile to you as like the kind of the newish prototype receiver for the NFL? It just seems like the league is moving so far away from like those like early 2000s enormous big bodied receivers on the outside. Does he fit? I guess I'm just teeing you up here. Does he fit that model?
Yeah, 100%. I think. And the funny thing is, like you're mentioning, I think that what you're alluding to is like the older days. It was like these big physical guys,
right?
Win with power and size on the outside. And he's a little bit smaller than that. He's probably going to be mainly in the slot in the NFL. But at the same time, like he's big compared to the rest of this class. Like he's 6 foot 200-ish.
That's not a joke, man. There's so many 5'9", 178-pound receivers in this class. It's insane.
It's worrisome to me.
It is.
Obviously, the NFL I think is changing, and it's hard to really get a big picture view of it because we are so just myopic throughout this whole process. Every year it's just like, oh, this guy's too small. But then we see that the NFL, if you zoom out, the NFL is changing. The offenses are changing. The defense is not allowed to hit as much. Everything is sort of geared towards the offense, and so these guys with the ability to get open and get open early, especially go over the middle of the field and not really have to get their heads taken off like they used to, they can survive in the NFL, I think. But at the same time, like Jaxon Smith-Njigba, he's like average size, which is great. Like he's 195 pounds or 200 pounds. He's like, and honestly, I think he plays pretty tough. Like he's not soft. There's a couple of plays I'm just thinking of in my head where, he caught a ball, got his head taken off. There's one play in particular where he got his helmet taken off and he still held on to the football, got right up, popped back up and just went back and played. And it's like, this is a tough, very savvy route runner, good after the catch. He's not going to be like the most explosive guy, but I think he's savvy after the catch. And, I think the comps to Amon-Ra St. Brown make a lot of sense to me. Just stylistically, get you a little bit yards after the catch, do a little bit of everything, just be really good, savvy, quarterback's best friend type of player. And like, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if he was really productive as a rookie.
Danny, by the way, before the show, it sounds like you're watching the 20 biggest hits of the 2000 NFL season clip on YouTube. And
Get myself psyched up,
Yeah, yearning for the good old days. No, really, really good stuff on JSN. Danny, who do you want to talk about next?
Dalton Kincaid is one of my favorite players in this class. And my comp for him was sort of just like a joke, but it was literally, I'm thinking it, but I don't want to say it because every time I watch Dalton Kincaid, Travis Kelce comes to mind. Like, obviously not the same size. Kelsey's got probably 10 or 15 pounds on him, but he's just so fluid, so elusive after the catch, kind of just the way he moves, the way he catches the football and changes direction really quickly, his body control, gets in and out of routes really quick, really tough at the catch point. There's just so much to like about this guy. And I think there's like maybe a little downside because he's a little older. But if you look back at kind of his history, he started football late in his life, had to walk on, or he went to San Diego, I think it was. He went to some small school.
University of San Diego, whatever, like an FCS school, I
Right.
think. And I think he'd only played football as maybe a senior in high school.
I think that's
immediately,
right.
I get that it's FCS, right? But like, he was immediately able to pick it up there, and it didn't take long from at Utah too.
And he came in, yeah, exactly. He transferred to Utah, has been really productive for them. He was second to Brock Bowers this year in catches and yards at tight end. So, I mean, like, this is a high level, like, production guy, in addition to the traits that you see on tape. I actually remember kind of when I first watched, I try not to do this, but it happens inevitably. Like, I remember thinking, I'm not going to like this guy as much as everyone likes him. Like, I just think the hype, because I was hearing all this hype about him. And I remember thinking, like, oh, probably I won't like as much as everyone else does. And then I watched it and I was like, holy shit. If you watch the USC tape, like,
oh my God,
that game was just incredible.
It's embarrassing for USC. He dropped like 200 something yards, right? Like, it was
It
like,
was-
I'm not exaggerating. I think it was in the 200s.
Stuff
Yeah,
always happens.
It was.
to
I think it
USC.
was in the 200. Yeah, like he just absolutely went bananas in that game. And so to me, he's a very, very interesting player. I really hope he lands on a team that utilizes the tight end a lot and asks him to do that kind of stuff. It doesn't ask him to like try and block because he's not good at that.
Please, no blocking for Dalton
I don't
Kincaid.
like blockers. Yeah,
I'm begging you. Danny, so you went into the process a little bit iffy on Dalton Kincaid, and you came out saying that he's Travis Kelce only good.
Yeah, it's always dangerous to compare guys to, the best player at their position in a generation, of course, which is why I didn't like officially do that. But
no, you didn't.
Yeah. Shades of.
You did mention maybe one of the only like touches of gray is that he is going to turn 24 this year. But as we know, like in general, you want to, if you're breaking ties, you're going to break in favor of the younger player. But like plenty of examples too. Like you can't just write these guys off just because they happen to be like turning 24 years old. And
right,
especially a guy with like kind of a meandering path to the NFL, like you pointed out, and who just was so good in 2022. And I think is clearly atop what is everyone is saying is like the best tight end class in years.
Yeah.
Really,
I looked up Kincaid. He had 16 catches for 234 yards and a touchdown against USC. And like in that one, like obviously when you put up 200 some yards, you're kind of gonna look like Travis Kelce as a tight end. But it was like, oh, there's just there's no safety or linebacker with the speed and athleticism to keep up with him. But like, he's a big dude. He's like 6'4", 6'5", 250s, I think. Corners aren't going to keep up with that guy either. Physically, they're not going to be able to like, handle him. And he showed that off, obviously, against USC. It's like also an embarrassing defensive performance.
Are you a USC guy?
No.
No. I've already made this joke, but Danny, Kyle tries to keep it on the down low. He doesn't want people to know he's part of Buckeye Nation.
Oh, okay. So you can tell me all about it.
He's the only Ohio State alum who does not drive around every college football Saturday with a giant Ohio State flag in the back of his Ford.
Yeah, well, we missed the Natty when I was there, so I'm still a little bitter about that one. We got it the year before I was there.
Like, I swear, I live in a suburb of St. Louis, Missouri. And by far the flag I see flown the most of colleges is just every Saturday. every large truck in my entire city is driving around with an Ohio State flag.
What about like
Flag
small
from the back.
sedans? Do you ever see like a
No, they're not.
reasonably sized car that's good on gas, maybe that flies a big flag?
Always a
okay.
2001 Chevy Silverado, like a really, really giant one that gets 8 miles per gallon.
Yeah, I was gonna say 8. You took it out of my mouth.
Sorry.
8 miles to the gallon. That's exactly what that car gets.
Reminds me of the old Simpsons joke about an SUV where they said Highway 12, City 0. Ohio State fans drive trucks that get 0 miles per gallon flying their flags.
What does that mean?
I have no idea. And Danny, I better move us on. Who is the third player you want to
All right, we'll go off of the obvious easy ones here for a minute and talk about Devon Achane, running back out of Texas A&M, who and I've he's been one of my favorite players in this draft class, and I've probably been hyping him up way more than I logically should be, just because he's 188 pounds. And I just wanted to say I recognize he's small. I recognize he's an outlier in size, and I'm probably going to regret this, but I just love watching this guy play. Like, he's so freaking explosive and fast. Like, he is the one guy I'd say in the last 5 years or something of doing this that I say to myself, like, he actually it comes close to like Tyreek Hill speed, like twitch. Not necessarily saying he's that fast.
Danny, to cut you off real quick, you compared someone to Kelsey, now Tyreek. You got to compare someone to Mahomes soon.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Sorry.
Hendon Hooker, the next Mahomes. No.
Sorry, you were speaking very eloquently about Devon Achane, and then
No. It's good. You got to take me down a notch with Achane just because I'm just like unreasonably high on him. But yeah, I mean, to me, he's just incredibly explosive. The acceleration is off the charts. He has like acceleration that matches or exceeds Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, that's how fast he is, I think. He does get a downgrade, obviously, because he's small, 188 pounds. But to me, like, get him in an offense that's getting him in space, get him involved in the passing game. He's a pretty good pass catcher. In fact, there were times in 2021, I think, where he was actually being used like as a slot receiver while they had Isaiah Spiller in the backfield, also kind of getting him on the field, doing that thing. He's honestly pretty good between the tackles. Not that he's going to get a lot of volume at the next level doing that, but he can be a guy that's not going to be completely betraying tendencies and offensive schemes and things like that. Like, they can run him up the middle here and there if they want, and he's got a little bit of wiggle, got juice to get, like, basically the way that I envision him is like he has access to gaps in the line that like most running backs don't have, because he's so fast to hit the hole. Once he plants his foot, he's just through there. And so, yeah, to me, he's just the most fun player to watch in this class. And I really hope he lands in a system that can kind of utilize him to take advantage of his skill set. Obviously, hopefully he doesn't get stuck behind a couple guys and not really do anything, because I really do think he could be a star if he was in the right system.
I mean, just totally boomer stats, but I mean, averaged almost 6.5 yards per carry. Scored 21 touchdowns on 369 carries. Like, for a small guy in the SEC, that's pretty amazing. I will say it is. I was not expecting Bryce Young to be like the heaviest skill player prospect in this class. Like, he's like the only one over 200 pounds.
Seriously, dude.
It's every receiver is like 180 pounds. But yeah, Devon Achane, he's the guy. There's no way, like, once these dynasty drafts get rolling in 2 weeks, like, where he's just going to be like, no matter what his real life draft capital is, like, yeah, he's good at 1.9, 110, right?
I took him. So I've done a couple already. I took him at the 203, which was absolutely ludicrously too high, but like I did it anyway because I'm like, I don't want anyone else to take him. I've seen him fall. These are super flex drafts, so it's a little different, but like I've seen him fall into the late second. That's about as far as he goes usually.
Achane, he's going to return a kick to the house in the preseason and have like
the
Amir Abdullah
preseason. So the Abdullah special.
Yes. Great call.
It's a shallow class. I can take him with the 104. There's almost no one good left here.
Except for Abdullah was not fast. Abdullah was quick.
Yeah,
Achane is like legit world class.
Oh, he's like track speed. He ran like a 4.3, low 4.3. He's like 4.32, I think. 4.32. And you see it too. Like, he is devastatingly fast.
Twitchy.
I have some numbers on Achane if I could share those real quick.
Please do.
He ranked in the 83rd percentile in elusive rating and 80th percentile in breakaway percentage last season. And of course, he ran that 4.32 at the combine. So really, a very impressive athlete. He also was a top something called the backfield dominator rating, which is put out by RotoViz. He was a workhorse for much of last year. So it's good to see. I think he has a lot going for him. I'm on board, Danny.
All right.
there's no way he's just not. I'm telling you, he's going to be sneaking in like late first round, and no matter what, like his real life draft capital is, because it just looks so good on paper. And real quick, I wish I were kidding about this. We mentioned the Amir Abdullah gif, like him housing it in that preseason. I remember where I was when I saw that. I was walking through the Cleveland, Ohio airport, and like several people had texted it to me while I was on a plane. And like I just remember, like, man, like he's
gonna be so awesome.
He's
He's still in the league.
I know,
he's still in the league,
right? It's not. He's had a good like most players drafted wherever he went, like the second round, or whatever. They eventually wash out, and he's still hanging around. So we were right all along to draft him in the 4th round as a rookie.
I'm 4th round, man. I took him, I think, the 2nd. Like,
I don't remember. He was going so high.
He went in the 2nd, I think, in like pretty much every day. Maybe the 1st.
He did not go in the 1st. He did not go in the 1st.
Kyle, you're too young to remember these things. Danny Kelly has brought 3 really great players so far: Dalton Kincaid, Devon Achane, and Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Who is 4th, Danny?
All right, so this guy just stylistically I love, and I think if he lands in the right spot, could be way better than people are expecting. That's Roschon Johnson, running back out of Texas. Just obviously stuck behind Bijan Robinson for most of his career. He actually was recruited as a quarterback, came in, switched immediately to running back because they had a need at running back, and then he led the team, I believe, that year in rushing. And so obviously, versatile, coachable, that like showing sacrifice in switching position and running with it, pun intended. And then obviously sticking with the team, even though they recruited like the best like running back recruit ever or whatever last 10 years. And obviously he was a backup there. But I think he's the type of running back that does a little bit of everything really well. Pass pro, catching passes, breaking tons of tackles, making the most of his carries, tone setter, special teams, like all the cliches that like coaches love, I think actually does matter a little bit, because I think he's going to see the field because of those things. And I don't know if he's ever going to be like a super explosive guy who runs away from people and creates big plays, but I've comped him to 2 guys that really come to mind for me with him is Chris Carson, the Seahawks former running back.
Oh, yeah.
And then, and in fact, like Chris Carson, if you look at their final year college numbers, they're almost like identical, because Chris Carson was backing up Justice Hill at Oklahoma State.
Man,
and then
Zoomers will not remember.
Yeah. Remember those days. That's Justice Hill is like a reason I'm like worried about Devon Achane a little bit. Like,
no, it's gonna Justice Hill. It's gonna finally happen in 2020.
He's still in the league, I think.
Yeah, he's been hanging around. He's still in the Ravens.
Yeah. So, but yes, like so for him, he's a big sort of upright runner, but he's physical. He breaks a lot of tackles. The other guy he reminds me of is Brian Robinson. I think like similar profiles. Just grinders that coaches are going to want to play because they trust them.
You mentioned cliches, Danny. The cliche of the rare guy recruited to Texas as a quarterback who they wanted to change positions, who like actually did it. Like we all remember the meme of Mac Brown recruiting like one generational athlete after another as like they were a quarterback. Like, we want you to play corner. Someone actually was recruited and changed positions for Texas, and he's the next Miles Sanders, stuck behind a generational talent. And yeah, you're not the first guy who's come on the pod and praised Roschon Johnson. He's gonna be another guy, depending on where he goes, where like his dynasty draft capital could like maybe like shock some people because they look at his college numbers, maybe don't know a ton about him. Like, this guy was a backup. Like, I know it was Bijan, but it seems like someone who could end up going really, really. Where have you seen him going in dynasty drafts, Danny? Do you know off the top of your head?
Anywhere, honestly, from like the late second, and this is I do super flex mostly.
Yeah.
Super flex, tight end premium. So you get like these guys get pushed back a little bit because there's tight ends going and quarterbacks going. But I believe just off the top of my head, like anywhere from late second into the middle part of the 3rd round. If you get him in the late 3rd, like that to me is like a huge value. But early to mid 3rd, I'd say is probably around average. I don't know the ADP in front of me, but yeah.
And that makes sense to me too. Like if it's a super flex and tight end premium, that he is probably going like mid 2nd and like more standard ones. And people like might be kind of uncomfortable with that. But yeah, you have to really contextualize. I mean, for being behind Bijan too, these are pretty great numbers. Like,
right.
He was like super efficient. Like he was a good tackle breaker in college. And I think what you said about him, coaches are probably going to like him. I don't know for sure, but like he did play special teams and will play special teams in the NFL. He's a good pass blocker. Connor Rogers came on and comped him to Jamal Williams because Williams, we haven't seen it recently, but he actually is a good pass catcher. He doesn't do that at all in Detroit. But in Green Bay, he was a really good pass catcher. And PFF ranks him every year as one of the best pass blockers. And that's like what Roschon projects to do. Like, I don't know if he's going to be the most special back, but like, I see him having a role in the league for a long time. And even as a rookie, because like you said, like, it reminds me of the opposite of when Damian Harris came in. Like, Damian Harris is a good runner.
Right.
He was healthy scratched for almost every game of his rookie year because he doesn't do anything other than run. Whereas Roschon's the opposite. Like, I don't know if he'll ever be like as interesting of a runner as Damian Harris. It's pretty good if his knees aren't shot. But he will immediately find a role doing something. And that's probably pretty valuable, especially for a guy like, he's not going to go at the top of the second round, right? I think he's a really good prospect, but he's going to have to earn his playing time in a committee and maybe on special teams. He has clearly shown that ability in college. He had to.
Yeah. I think and with this year's running back class in particular, like there's about 12 guys that could go at that third round, fourth round range. I think like it's hard to project some of these guys. Some of them might fall a little bit later, but if you're doing dynasty drafts before the draft, I think Roschon is one of the safer guys, quote unquote, safer running backs in this like, sort of tier of running backs to take, just because I do think he's going to earn those reps early on because the coaches will be able to like trust him to do some of that stuff that you don't really expect like Zach Evans to do or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I feel like he has a higher floor year one and he'll retain his value a little bit quicker, or he'll like pay off on his value a little quicker, and you can maybe trade him if you don't like what's happening. But yeah.
95th percentile elusive rating for Roschon Johnson. So the guy broke some tackles in college, and I think that translates pretty well usually to the NFL.
He averaged 4.28 yards after contact per attempt, which was actually more than Bijan.
There you go. Bijan's a
so he's better than Bijan is what I'm saying. Yeah.
I heard it here first.
Yeah.
Danny, real quick, you comped him to Chris Carson. Does that mean he like runs like a crash test dummy? Like hopefully like he's not like seeking out contact and like man, Chris Carson was so fun to watch play.
Oh yeah.
Man.
Yeah. I think so. Like he'll try to run guys over. He'll jump over guys. That kind of reminded me of Chris Carson too. Just like and the fact that they're both taller, big physical guys, without like an extra gear to run away from people. Like Chris Carson throughout his career, like I think had probably like 2 20-yard plus runs. You know what I mean? Like, he's just like not creating big plays. But he's just so good everywhere else that it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Yeah, for the listener, Roschon 6'2", 220. He's legit big. Like he can play all three downs. Obviously, he didn't get to do it in college. He has a reasonable excuse. I think he's a hard guy for the spreadsheet nerds, myself included, to handle because like guys who are less. He's not even committee back. He was just a backup in college. Just almost never pan out. But like if you make an exception to the rule, this is what it looks like. Obviously, like you can be a little more, dig a little deeper and be like, yeah, of course they played Bijan over him. But when he was on the field, as Denny pointed out with his elite elusiveness, like he made every snap, every touch count.
Finally, a prospect cracking 2 bills, by the way.
Yeah.
Danny, who is the last guy you want to talk about?
Can I give you guys the choice between 3 people? Because I'm having a very hard time deciding who I want to talk about. And that way you can say,
I'll take it.
Throw it to Kyle.
Marvin Mims, Jayden Reed,
one winner,
Jayden Reed, sorry, and then Kendre Miller. Who do you like?
Go with Kendre. Go with Kendre. Go with Kendre and Mims if you can do those two.
Sure. So we'll start with Kendre. He's been sort of a tough one for me to like figure out throughout the process. There are games where I watch him and I'm like, this guy is Ramondre Stevenson light. He just kind of has that similar style of running where bigger guy with really quick, light feet, able to negotiate tight spaces and anticipate diving tackle. Like the one thing I love about Ramondre is like guys will like dive at his feet constantly, and he always like makes guys miss with these, anticipatory jumps and jukes and leaps and things, which I always love that. Like stylistically, it's such a fun thing to watch. And so I saw that on his tape a little bit. He, I think, has underrated ability as a pass catcher. Like I don't think he's going to be necessarily catching 60 balls or anything like that, but I think he could be utilized in the passing game. And he's just got, again, he's big, which matters in this class. And so he's another guy that I think could go anywhere from like late 3rd to 5th round, and it wouldn't really surprise me. But I liked his tape enough to kind of get behind him. And I've started to really like him more and more as I go throughout this process and watch him more and compare him to the other backs more. He just seems to me like a very well-rounded prospect who can break tackles. He's got a little bit of power in the goal line area. I think they would be able to utilize him in the red zone. He can catch passes well enough to be utilized there. and he's young. He's only 20 something years old. He's 20 and change. He's 20, I think, in like 5 months or something like that. So he's really young and has a lot of room to develop and all that. And also not very much tread on the tires, or he has a lot of tread on the tires still. So I think there's a lot to like there. Assuming he gets early day 3 capital and not late day 3, I think I'm in on him.
He might get it too, because like you said, he doesn't turn 21 until this summer. Had just a mammoth final year at TCU after the coaching change. He seems like someone the teams will be able to talk themselves into.
I wanted to say briefly that he visited with the Lions. Miller visited with the Lions this week, and the Lions front office has said that they don't care about the analytics as far as running backs go. So we could see that happen.
They care about dog levels, and he's got some dog in him. Also, like you said, Danny, we only have so many running backs in this class that are going to be over 200. Like, if you want a guy who can handle a lot of touches, your options are relatively slim this year. And I think that's like a pretty obvious, like easy path for him to get into the 3rd round among a lot of guys. Like you said, there are a lot of guys whose range of outcomes, as we are a week out from the draft, is like sneaks into late day 2, early day 3, or gets to the 5th or 6th round. I just don't know how teams value them. He has like a key trait that that a lot of guys in this class at every single position somehow don't have, which is just size and physicality. So I'll actually let you talk about Jayden Reed. I think I've done the Marvin Mims spiel on this show before.
I was going to say, Kyle's eyes lit up at Marvin Mims. I know Eric Froton loves Marvin Mims. And Danny, I know we got to get you out of here. So yeah, you can choose Reed and Mims.
I'll choose Jayden Reed just because I feel like Mims has gotten so much steam.
He's getting a lot of Twitter love.
I believe it's called steam.
Yeah. We're steaming him up. That we can talk about somebody else. But yeah, Jayden Reed to me was a guy that was sort of on my radar going into the Senior Bowl. You know, not like a guy that I was really looking forward to watching necessarily. And then I thought he had one of the best weeks of any of the receivers there. He was just, again, going back to the size thing, he's not big, but he's a lot bigger than some of these other, 170 pound, 165 pound guys that are in this class. He's like 180, 190 pounds.
And he's built a little bit 5'11". That's like 6'4" now. And
he looked big compared to the other receivers, which is weird because he's whatever he is, 5'11", 185, 190 pounds. But he looked a lot bigger. He's built more compactly and muscular than I think a lot of these other guys. Some of these receivers coming in are honestly like petite. You know what I mean? Like there's no room to put on weight either, probably for some of these guys. So that's another reason I liked him. But, going back to his college days, the 2022 offense for Michigan State was abysmal. The passing offense was not good. So that certainly hurt his production. But going back, and I was watching some of his 2021 tape, and like, guy gets open downfield. He's explosive. He's got really quick feet to get off the line. As a quick aside, man, watching that offense, Kenneth Walker is ridiculous. Like, he's so good. I was going back and watching Jayden Reed in 2021, and I kept being like, how were people not higher on Kenny Walker? Like, Kenneth Walker was like ludicrously good.
He was like flattening people too, I feel like.
So, but anyways, yes, to me, he has, he's got the speed. He's got a little bit more size. He's got really quick feet. He's a good returner, which I think always sort of just adds to the profile. It's like one more thing you can check off. Like, he's got dynamic ability in open field and in space. He turns into a running back after the catch. He is 23 years old, so that's definitely like
never mind.
A knock.
Out on him, yeah.
It's a knock on his profile, but he did start his career at Western Michigan, and he outproduced Sky Moore at Western Michigan, which maybe is not like the strongest argument in retrospect, but like, he went in there and he did like, he put up big numbers right away. He transferred to Michigan State. And so he's had a little bit of a circuitous route through college, but that might be a part of the reason why he's an older prospect. I think he produced early in his career regardless.
And the league has gotten more comfortable. Real quick, the league has just gotten more comfortable with those circuitous routes too. Routes. And it's like, that's just becoming a bigger part of the college prospect experience.
Yeah, now. Especially with like NIL and then the ability for players to move more freely. Like, it makes sense for some of them to stay. Not that he like exactly fits that bill. It was Dwayne Eskridge that he outproduced.
Not Sky Moore. My bad.
I think Dwayne's probably starting in 3 receiver sets. He outproduced.
Danny doesn't want to talk about it. Seahawks fan doesn't want to talk about it.
That's not. Yeah, again, not a great argument necessarily that he outproduced Dwayne Eskridge, but yeah, it is notable because Eskridge got drafted in the second round.
Yeah, I mean, being on an NFL roster, like that guy is good in college, right?
Right,
Like, and it's an accomplishment in the NFL. So the fact that he outproduced him, I actually do think like means something, right? I don't know how much it means; it's hard to quantify. But, like, I actually do think that's important. Like, it's better than not outproducing Dwayne Eskridge. Do you have? I have one like random question. Do you like? Should he have left after the 2021 season? He topped 1,000 yards. It was like a really strong breakout season for him, and he would have left as like productive 3-year player, which analytically matters a lot. I think probably matters for NFL teams that are analytically focused too.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had 59 catches, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. Am I looking at that right? I think that's what he had as a junior, and yeah, I mean,
that is correct.
Probably a day 2 guy with those stats. So yeah, I do not know why. I'm sure it's different for everybody, but maybe he came back, thought that the team would do well, or there's always different reasons for it. Maybe he got a bad grade from the draft advisory board. But yeah, he certainly put together a good enough season that year to come out and like would have been on all of our radar, I think, on that one. But obviously didn't work out for him coming back because the numbers went down. But I still think he's, based on everything you're hearing, sort of like, well, Jim Nagy obviously does a lot of promoting of Senior Bowl guys in general, but like he's hearing potentially a day 2 for this guy. And so if Jayden Reed ends up on day 2, like I think he's going to be one of the guys that jumps a lot in rookie drafts. I mean, because I got him, I think like late 4th in one draft. Like he's not someone
that seems unlikely. Yeah. Like he's going to be like a riser.
Yeah, and he'll be like 3rd round at least if he does go on day 2. So he's a guy to keep in mind on draft day.
We joked about the age, but I think this is something we're going to have to get used to, I think, with prospects being a little more open to older prospects for 2 reasons. Because there actually will be some guys who just stay in college now because they like it with the NIL money. That's still going to be the exception.
Like Van Wilder. I like it.
Yeah. Like that's going to be like an exception, but just there are going to be guys who would have spent their entire career buried on a depth chart. But now with it being so much easier to transfer, like guys who just were good all along and we just didn't know, like Matt Castle, there's not going to be Matt Castles entering the league anymore with like 0 college pass attempts. You know, like if you're good, you're in general just not going to wither on a roster. And we just maybe shouldn't be so dismissive of like a 23-year-old prospect the way we typically are in dynasty drafts. Like to say Joseph Burrow. Yeah, we were right about him though. He's terrible. Really, really good stuff, Danny. Anything in particular you got coming up for the draft? Only 1 week left. It's crunch time.
I know.
What do you got going on over at the Ringer?
Well, you can check out my NFL draft guide at the what is it?
The Ringer. NFL Beast, draft, right? Your draft guide's called The Beast from The Athletic.
No, that's not me. NFLdraft.theringer.com. And then you can check me out on the Ringer NFL Draft Show / the Ringer NFL Fantasy Show, Ringer Fantasy Football Show. We have 2 names and I never get either of them right. The Ringer Fantasy.
It's a thing we wouldn't understand.
We wouldn't know anything about
name for decades.
I need to practice this, I think. And then we got the Metal Draft coming out next week. If you've seen that in the past, it's basically just a big spoof that we do about turning the NFL Draft into like a monster truck show, essentially. It's hard to explain. But
sounds very Ringer. It sounds like something that needs to be checked out.
Can't really explain the Metal Draft. Just look up Metal Draft Ringer.
I thought you guys were drafting metal bands. You know?
That sounds like something the Ringer would do. But no.
I would honor the new Metallica album. Danny, your draft guide is honestly amazing, must-read stuff. So please check out Danny's draft. Very easy to find, pinned at his profile on Twitter at Danny B. Kelly. You got a week to read it. I would highly recommend doing so. Thank you so much for coming by and sharing some of your knowledge, letting us pick your brain, letting us literally pick some of the players you talked about.
No problem. Appreciate it, guys.
For Danny Kelly, for Denny Carter, for Kyle Dvorchak, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week with a lot more draft content.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.